The first settlers in Port Phillip Bay were the crew of the HMS Investigator, commanded by Matthew Flinders in 1803. And they established a settlement just near Sorrento, which they subsequently abandoned in 1804. Now, what I didn't know was some 30 years later, settlers from Tasmania came across to the mouth of the Yarra River and established Melbourne. And you just have to wonder what the snapper fishing back then was really like.
I think snapper fishing in Port Phillip Bay now, and I think it's as good as it's ever been. Really, in the last sort of 50 years in Victoria.
Now the fishery's managed properly, there's fish for everyone.
Yeah.
There's as many fish as you want to catch now.
You only have to go and look at the aircraft down off Frankston in the water there. They've been there since 1949, and you just see the cloud of fish swimming around those reefs, those aircraft that are lying there on the bottom of the bay. It's quite remarkable.
Well, I think it's one of the greatest assets that Melbourne's got. It's just to think that you can still go out after all these years and catch, 7 or 8 kilo snapper. Yeah, it's just amazing fishery.
I first fished Port Phillip Bay in the 60s and 70s, land-based for snapper. And then later, in the 80s, got a boat. And I can tell you, back then, the fishing was a lot worse than what it is now. So, this is going to be my story of one of the best suburban fisheries that I believe exists in the world. Port Phillip Bay and its snapper fishery. Why? Why is it so good now? Well, back in the late 90s, our current Premier then, Jeff Kennett, banned scalloping in the bay. And then fast forward now to earlier, in 2021, 2022, our current Premier, Daniel Andrews, has banned commercial netting in the bay. And the results have been phenomenal. The fishing now is way better than what it was back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, because that scallop dredging is gone. And I guess there's more fish about now because there's no netting. So this is my story of my favourite fishery. Port Phillip Bay, apart from being a world-class fishery, has some beautiful hidden secrets. Campbell's Cove is a place where your backyard is right on the beach. Millionaire's Walk, where you can overlook the Southern Rip, Red Cliffs at sunset, and of course the unique Pope's Eye, which is an indicator of just how the bay has been managed back to its former glory.
I think it's as good as it's ever been. When we think about what's happened, we've removed the scallop dredges out of the bay, we've removed the netting out of the bay, we've got much better inflows out of the Patterson River, the Werribee River, the Yarra River. We know that they assist and support with the breeding that occurs in the bay. We've got new fish habitat in terms of reefs in the bay. So when you add all of that stuff up, you think the fishing should be better, but the absolute real winner for us is the feedback that we get from recreational fishers. And they tell us every day that they're enjoying great fishing.
I've been working here for 6 years. I've seen a lot of boats come in with a lot of fish, and since the netting's been gone, I really find that the fish are breeding a lot better. There's more breeders, and that's why you'll see there's a lot of juvenile snapper in the bay.
I've been fishing Port Phillip Bay since I was 16. I'm now 61, so that's 45 years. And it's just great to see the condition the bay is in nowadays.
Without a doubt, I think, definitely the scallop dredging, that stopped a long time ago. So the bay's a lot cleaner, it's not as silty as it used to be.
We've got a lot more fishermen now with bigger boats. That's all come down to the netting, I believe. Now that that's gone, it's a lot better.
The netters are gone, the long lining has been reduced, which has created more habitat for all your crustaceans, all your newborn fish, your fingerlings. They've all got somewhere to live now. We don't have the silt coming up in the water column, dirtying the water. Quite often nowadays you can go out in 12, 14 metres and see the bottom. 20 years ago, you would never see the bottom in water deeper than 8 metres, so that's a dramatic difference.
Back in the 1980s and 90s, we actually had quite low spawning success and that shows in our data. And then we got to the late 90s and 2000s, we actually started to have some very strong spawning events, and that's what resulted in the recovery of our fishery. And subsequently we've had some moderate spawning until 2018, and then we had really the strongest ever spawning event in 30 years. And then in 2021 we had another strong event, so our fishery is going to definitely improve in the next 10 years.
There's lots of keys to snapper fishing, like bait, how you rig it, etc, etc. But three of the main keys is sounders and GPS. GPS for your marks, sounders to see the fish. What you're going to find in the bay with a good sounder, like here, there's bait, no fish. I know this is a pretty good mark, and as you can see, as we get onto the mark, up come the fish. Now these guys aren't big, but there's certainly plenty of them and they're plenty active. Now a lot of these marks may be dumps, as they call them, artificial reefs, but go to your mark, no fish, your sounder, your GPS, and then of course your anchor. The ability to move is really important.
Best hit to catching snapper, big snapper and baggy angle snapper is you got to keep moving, you got to look for the fish.
If you know there's fish in an area, just go give it a crack.
15 minutes, 20 minutes, nothing happening, move.
And by all means use your snapper snatchers. On the charter boats, probably 90% of my fish come in on snapper snatchers. Some charters we won't even use the casting rod.
Paternoster rig, or snapper snatchers, two out the back, silver whiting or a pilchard on the paternoster rigs, just half a pilly, a head or a tail.
We used to use flathead bait, flathead fillets. You'd go out and catch your bait out there with a bit of white bait. And first 3 or 4 flathead you'd catch, you'd use for bait for the snapper. Didn't use to buy bait. If you did buy bait, you'd bought pilchards.
So to rig a pilchard's pretty simple. You've just got your fixed 2-hook rig here, which is a couple of suicides. These are about 6/0s, 5/0s of 6/0. Bottom hook, just under the gill, up through the eye, expose the hook nicely. Couple of wraps, and then the next hook just back towards the head and out the back, and then just a simple half hitch. Because it's fairly deep here, 18-20 metres, I always like to give it a bit of extra so it actually sinks down, just doesn't swing down under the boat. I was saying before about the tools you need to catch snapper. This is another very important tool. It's called a snapper rack, and simply it just means, apart from the fact that you can fish a lot of rods, if you've got, 3-4 people on board, you can fish up to 12 rods. So it's legal in Victoria to fish 4 rods per one angler. But what these snapper racks do is they actually hold the rod almost vertical, probably about 5-10 degrees to horizontal. So when your snapper hits, you just put a little bit of drag on it, about 1 kilo. Snapper hits, it'll hook it up, and then all you've got to do is just pick it up out of the rack. One other hint that I'll give you is that I always like to use squid, and squid will last a lot longer than a pilchard. So you put some pilchards out, they're great snapper baits, but smaller fish and pickers like flathead will knock them off pretty quickly. Squid are much more resilient. What you need to do in your rack is when you cast your squid out, you need to know which one's your squid rod. So I'm going to put this on the right-hand side of the rack, so I know my squid's out there, and I don't have to check that quite as much. The other important thing with squid baits is slightly larger hooks. These are 8/0s, a little bit further apart, and rigging a squid head's actually quite simple. You just take the top hook down through the top of the squid head, nice and free, and then this, just leave the other hook swinging. And then a couple of half hitches on the top of the head just to hold it in place. Great big snapper bait. That's all that needs to be done. It's always a good idea to put a bit of burley in, but not too much. So probably, you know, 2 or 3 pilchards every 10 minutes is probably just about right. Here we go. On the eastern side of Port Phillip Bay, from Ricketts Point all the way north to Sandringham, are a series of natural reefs in depths ranging from 2 to 6 metres. And one of the very best reef systems in Port Phillip Bay is the Ricketts Point Marine Sanctuary. It's well marked by the yellow buoys, and its crystal clear shallow waters are home to a sandstone reef complex that is truly amazing.
It's doing a good job, and there's a lot of fish inside the marine park.
As you'd expect.
Spawning and breeding, it's just full. It's fantastic.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah.
And how do you tell where the marine park is?
All those yellow poles, we've got to stay outside all the yellow poles.
We were originally in favour of the park, but they wanted to make it a lot bigger than what it was, and we modified that with discussion through, I was a member of Verfish at that stage, and I helped modify the boundaries of the marine park to the navigation posts.
Is it legal to drive your boat in there if you've got fishing rods on your boat?
Go in there as long as you're not fishing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, fine.
They put an extra couple of yellow posts and that became the boundary, whereas the original boundary of the marine park was much further out to sea. And my argument was that navigation posts more or less pointed out the edge of the reef, and after that was more mud, so there wasn't much value in having the marine park extending another mile or so further out from where it is now.
These are right, Dave. There's all of a kilo.
Beautiful.
Good stuff. And this is actually probably the northernmost end of the reef system.
This is the last little reef.
Yeah, it doesn't go much past Sandringham, so we've got Red Bluff over there and the Cerberus.
And we're out on the fringe where we are, but it starts in about 27 feet, the reef starts, and we're just outside of it at the moment.
And a nice kilo snapper off the reef.
Yeah, fabulous, yeah.
Back in the water with that one too, Dave, eh?
Yeah.
And what's the reef like now?
Yeah, it's beautiful.